On today's show, the Cavs head off to the All-Star break with a win over the Toronto Raptors. We'll talk about their night in Toronto. Max Strus being back in the starting lineup and a stat that I've got my eye on for the rest of the season, all ahead on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like 92.3 The Fan, my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Give us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. A proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, make sure you go sign up for the free Locked On Cavs daily newsletter. It's your one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox every single day. You can sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That is LockedOnDaily.com. And start your day with the all-new free Locked On Cavs newsletter. The Cleveland Cavaliers closed out their quote-unquote first half of the regular season with a 131-108 win over the Toronto Raptors in a game that really wasn't as close as that final score would indicate. They led this game by as many as 39 points in the second half. They let their foot off the gas, certainly in the third quarter, didn't have a great second half, really didn't have a great final 18 minutes of this game. They pushed ahead a little bit more in the fourth quarter, made sure that the game was out of reach, and then took their foot off the gas once again. But this was a game that the spirit of the win was by more than what the final margin of victory was. And I think that this game, I think, is really the sign of a mature team. And I've talked about this a few times this year because the Cavs, for as much as I see when I'm in the locker room after home games and road games too that I'm at, and that I think you guys have the chance to be able to see when you're watching the post-game interviews that are inside the locker room for home games on TV afterwards on the post-game show, you see a group that really jokes around a lot and has a lot of fun with each other, and a group that does get along and has great camaraderie. And all that stuff matters. All that stuff is important, and all that stuff is true. But I think that this game on Wednesday night in Toronto was really the case of, yeah, all that stuff happens, but when it's time to get down to business, this is a team that gets down to business. Because I look at this game, and the Cavs were big favorites. I believe they were 14.5-point favorites against a Toronto team that isn't very good, played on Tuesday night, and I believe actually beat Philadelphia. Yeah, they beat Philadelphia on Tuesday night before playing the Cavs Wednesday night. So they can look at that and say, okay, well, they're on the second ever back-to-back. They're not a great team. Like, that is a really easy game, I think, to look past. And then when you add in that it's the final game before the All-Star break, this team is finally going to get a significant break, which I think some guys can certainly use. This is the quintessential trap game. It's against a team you should beat, and the Cavs took care of business. It's a game where it's very easy to look ahead and say, man, we are 48 minutes away from getting to go on a little mini vacation. Or if you're involved in the All-Star festivities, like the Cavs coaching staff, Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, like, I think it's just a really easy thing to say, we're so close to going to All-Star. And then after that, being able to maybe get away for a couple of days before the second half of the season starts. And I think it's easy to not forget that the game is happening, but maybe not put as much importance on it, or maybe not have as much focus on that game. And I think the Cavs didn't let that happen. I thought that was the best thing, or one of the best things, to come out of this game. And then you also add in too that this is a Cavs team that's down some bodies. Max Strus was back. I'll talk about him coming up in a minute here, but Ty Jerome didn't play. Isaac Okoro obviously still out. Dean Wade obviously still out. I mean, Craig Porter Jr. I thought played pretty well, but he got some serious rotation minutes in this game. Jalen Tyson I thought played okay, hit a couple of big shots. He got some serious rotation minutes in this game. Like, you're still seeing too, despite being shorthanded, Kenny Atkinson is going to try and play as many guys as he can, as many guys that belong to be on the floor, deserve to be on the floor, which I do think is a really good sign. And there's one thing that I noticed too. So the New York Knicks, they beat the Atlanta Hawks on Wednesday night in overtime. It was 149-148. Georgie and Carousel both had good games. That's not what this is about, though. But every member of the New York Knicks starting five in that game played at least 42 minutes. I believe Precious Achua played the fewest minutes of the starters. It was like 42 minutes and 15 seconds or something like that he played in this game on Wednesday night. And yeah, there's an added 5 minutes that kind of builds in it. Like Karl Towns played 47 minutes in this game because of those extra 5 minutes of overtime. The Cavs have had this season, and this is a big testament to Kenny Atkinson, and I do think that this is something that was on display with the use of the depth that he's been willing to go into on Wednesday night. The Cavs have had one player in one game this season play 40 minutes. It has happened once in 54 games. They have had one player one time play 40 minutes. It was Donovan Mitchell, the first loss of the season in Boston. I think part of the reason why he played 40 minutes was because, one, the Cavs were very shorthanded in that game. They were down Max Strus, Isaac Okoro, Karis LeVert, Dean Wade. All those guys didn't play. Two, the Cavs were undefeated going into that game. They were 15-0. That was obviously their first loss of the season. And three, it was an NBA Cup game, so the Cavs did put a little bit more importance on it, not just that they were trying to keep a historic winning streak alive. It's that, they did care about the NBA Cup at that point. So they've had one time where a player has played 40-plus minutes. And that, when you are down as many guys as the Cavs are right now, I think it would be really easy for Kenny Atkinson to say, hey, okay, well, we're missing these rotation players. So Donovan Mitchell's minutes are going to get ramped up, or Darius Garland's minutes are going to get ramped up. I don't think Darius Garland has played 37 minutes in a single game this year. That is a ridiculous stat, and I think it's a true testament to Kenny Atkinson as a coach, and also Kenny Atkinson trusting this team, and this team having really just an elite amount of depth. Like, you look around the league, and there are not many teams that can boast the amount of depth that the Cavs have. Like, Boston doesn't play 10 guys regularly. The only really other good team that I can think of is OKC, where they play a ton of guys and they don't have super high minute totals on a regular basis. But I just thought it was a very stark contrast. And I thought it was interesting because both the Knicks and Cavs are down guys right now. And that happens throughout the course of the NBA. And the Cavs don't let it affect them, and other teams do. And I think that was, I thought, on display on Wednesday night in Toronto. I thought that was a really good thing. I also, too, before I get to the Max Strus stuff, because I want to spend segment number 2 talking about him and DeAndre Hunter, because I know that is a really important thing. Max was obviously back in the starting lineup on Wednesday night, but I do think Sam Merrill deserves a little bit of a shout out here, because Sam in this month has been back to being a really good shooter. So he came into the month of February not shooting the basketball very well. In the games he had played this month prior to Wednesday night, which he had played in 4 games, he missed the 1 game in Washington due to personal reasons. Sam had been shooting 56.7% from 3. Again, it's a small sample size. I don't know that it's worth getting excited about yet, but he hit 4 more threes on Wednesday night in Toronto. Was 4 of 10 from the field. 10 is probably a little higher than I think his volume should be. I think he should probably be around 7 or so per game for him. But he also did play 26 minutes, and he's got open shots and he's a great shooter. But I think that he looks like a guy that's back. Like, his shot looks better. He looks a little bit to me like he's more on balance with his shot than he has been throughout most of this season. I think that's a really, really good sign for where the Cavs want to go, because if he's going to be part of this rotation, he's got to hit shots. He did that again on Wednesday. That's something he has consistently done in the month of February. And, maybe it is not the best time that the All-Star break is here for him, but I do think it's a really good sign that he's been shooting the basketball really well so far this month. So the starting lineup came out, and Max Strus was in it. He returned from a 1-game absence where he missed with a sore right ankle, and he just went right back into his normal role. That upset, I think, a lot of people. A lot of people read into that. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk through the starting lineup. We're going to talk through who should be in the starting lineup. We're going to talk through whether or not it makes sense for Max Strus to continue to be with that group. And of course, we will also talk about the great game that Max had, because he was awesome, particularly in that first quarter. So all of that straight ahead next, right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show brought to you by Wayfair. After the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC. I always find that decluttering and refreshing my personal space, well, it helps to get me back into a routine. It's very easy to lose your routine around the holiday season, right? Like you've got parties, you've got days off of work, you've got so much going on. And then, you flip into the new year and it's like, how did I do this before? Right? Like it's like, what have I been doing? Because you get used to being out of rhythm, and maybe decluttering and sprucing things up a little bit can help pop you right back into that routine. So whether you're tidying up, clearing out, or maybe just want to give that space a new look to start the year, Wayfair has everything you need, and it's all within your budget. Maybe you're looking for furniture. Well, they've got a huge selection, and it makes it easy to find pieces that fit your style and budget. You don't want to have to compromise there. You want something that fits the style, something that fits the budget. You don't want those to be two different things. You want it to be the same. Plus, Wayfair has free and hassle-free delivery, even for the larger items. They've got some big stuff there. Still get it delivered for free. Wayfair site, very easy to navigate, and you can find everything you need in no time. So give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com. That is WAYFAIR.com right now. Again, wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home, Wayfair. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. So the starting lineup came out 45 minutes or so before tip in Toronto on Wednesday night. And there were several people that were upset about it, certainly in my mentions on social media, and just other things that I saw across, some Cavs fans that I follow, just people that I like to kind of keep a pulse of the fan base on. And people were upset because Max Strus was in the starting lineup. And I get it, because the team just acquired DeAndre Hunter, who I think is a really, really great fit with the rest of the core four. But I also think that people kind of have started to undersell Max Strus just a little bit. Max came out and had a great game. Hit 4 threes in the first quarter. Those were, of course, the only 4 shots he would hit all night, but he finished with 14 points, 6 assists, 5 rebounds, had a steal, was a plus 33 in 26 minutes. That's a really good game for Max Strus. I think every Cavs fan should be happy if Max Strus has that game night in and night out. Like, that is an elite role player type of game. And I get it, because you want to have DeAndre Hunter in the starting lineup. And I do think, too, that when push comes to shove, DeAndre Hunter is the better option to be in the starting lineup. That's where I'm at with this. And that's after seeing DeAndre Hunter play in 2 games. But that doesn't mean that Max Strus is a bad fit in the starting lineup, because there is a lot of history with him with that group. So before the game started on Wednesday, because the stat has not been updated with Wednesday's results, and of course I think would only go up after what happened on Wednesday with how good they were, but the core 4 plus Max Strus played right around 200 possessions together so far this year. So that's a decent sample size for a 5-man lineup. It's not huge, but it's not small either. That group had a net rating of 26.3. So per 100 possessions, they were outscoring opponents by 26.3. And then, of course, we saw them on Wednesday night obliterate the Raptors very early on in this game. I mean, Toronto had no answer really from the jump. And I know that the starting lineup was not in for all of it. And I do have the substitution patterns that I want to talk about here in a second. But that group is really, really good together. And I just think that is something that's worth bringing up when you talk about moving DeAndre Hunter into the starting lineup, which I do think makes sense and is the thing that is a lever that I would pull when DeAndre Hunter is ready to be fully up to speed. Now, everything that I have seen, everything that I've heard, it looks like the integration process for DeAndre Hunter is going really, really well. Like, he's picked up on things really well. Watching these games, you don't see him out of place. Maybe offensively, he doesn't quite have the rhythm and timing of every single thing down, but he's a shot maker. He's a guy that can go out and get buckets. And we saw that on display on Wednesday night, because I thought he had a really strong game off the bench. He finished with 18 points, hit a few threes, hit a couple of tough shots. Like, I think that he brings more offensively in terms of being able to go get buckets than Max Strus does. I don't know that that's needed in the starting lineup, but when the Cavs are fully healthy, I don't know that that's needed off the bench with Ty Jerome. And then plus you're going to have one of Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell in the majority of those those bench units, especially in the playoffs. Like, they're just not going to be minutes when the game is still, the result is still up in the air, that one of those guys isn't on the floor. So I do think that maybe that bench scoring is just a little bit overrated, and something that was needed in Atlanta as to why DeAndre Hunter came off the bench that might not be needed in Cleveland. But the starting lineup is, I would go DeAndre Hunter when he's ready to be in the starting lineup. I don't know when that will be. Kenny Atkinson said when he was asked about this, it's 3 to 4 games before a player really starts feeling comfortable. And it's probably 15 or 20 games before a coach really starts feeling comfortable with the new player. So we've got a lot of time here. And there are 28 games left that separate us from the postseason. Before the Cavs will play a playoff game, there are 28 regular season games left that they have to play. And that's a lot of time to figure these things out for DeAndre Hunter to get comfortable, not only with the starters, but with different lineups. And for Kenny Atkinson to really feel what lineups with Hunter make the most sense, the best way to optimize him, the best way to optimize those groups. Like, that is an important thing to watch for the rest of the season. Now, that said, I think that defense is the area where this team can improve the most from what they were before they acquired DeAndre Hunter. And that's kind of like, well, no kidding, man, type of thing, because the Cavs have been the best offense in the NBA all season long, where they have an offensive rating of 121.9. Like, it's just ridiculous what they do offensively, and on defense, they're 8th. So no kidding. There's more room for them to grow on the defensive end of the floor than the offensive end of the floor. But I do think that it's going to matter how well they defend in the postseason, because if you look at all the teams above them, they're all playoff teams. And the team that they're going to have to worry about, the Boston Celtics, they're going to have to get stops, because that offense, the Cavs are number 1, Boston's number 4. Like, they are an elite level offense too. And there's, I don't think they have even tapped into what they're capable of on that end. I do think they get lazy at times, and I don't expect that to be the case in the postseason. And I thought that the defense, particularly in the first half, and I think that this has been in both games that DeAndre Hunter has played, the first half defense that he's played has been fantastic. If you go back to, obviously the Cavs started, they were up 16-0, I think, before DeAndre Hunter took his first rest against Minnesota on Monday night. And then in the game on Wednesday night, Hunter played right around 15 minutes in the first half. I think it was like 14 and like 45 seconds or something like that. But Toronto only scored 22 points in the entire time DeAndre Hunter was on the floor in the first half, which was one of the lowest marks on the team. He was really good defensively. I just think that adding his length, particularly when he's playing alongside Jared Allen or Evan Mobley, and he played alongside both of those guys. So when he checked in the first quarter, that's when Mobley and Mitchell exited. So Hunter came in and Sam Merrill came in, and they played alongside Strus, Garland, and Allen. That group was really good, and having that length there from DeAndre Hunter, I think, shrinks the floor for opposing offenses. And then he stayed in with Evan Mobley, and he played at the end of the half with the starting 5. And that was something that I thought was really interesting to see, because I do want to see more of that group. I want to see what that group looks like. And even if it's 4 minutes here, 3 minutes here, and also did play, there was a lineup that I really think can do a lot of damage on both ends of the floor, but it's both guards. So Darius and Donovan, Max Strus, DeAndre Hunter playing the 4, and Evan Mobley playing the 5. One, I think that is a tremendous defensive lineup, because I do think Max Strus is a really good defender, and he doesn't maybe necessarily get all the credit that he deserves on that end of the floor. And then offensively, there are weapons everywhere. There are 5+ offensive players. They're all above average on that end of the floor. And that, I think, is a really, really good thing for this Cavs team. But it's going to be a work in progress. There are going to be a lot of, I think, trial and error moments for the Cavs in the quote unquote second half of the season, in the final 28 games that they play, because they're going to, one, hopefully get healthier. And we don't know what this team looks like fully healthy, because they've not been fully healthy. They've had one game at full health this year. And obviously DeAndre Hunter was not part of that because he wasn't here. So when they get Isaac Okoro back, when they get Dean Wade back, when those guys all feel like they're fully 100% back, what does this team look like? What are the best lineups that Kenny Atkinson can go to? Those are some really important things to figure out for the last 28 games of the season. But on Wednesday night, I thought we saw a really good performance from Max Strus. I thought we saw a really good performance from DeAndre Hunter. It doesn't change my opinion of who I think in the postseason should be in the starting five, should be seeing more minutes with the core four. It's DeAndre Hunter, but I don't think Max Strus is a bad option here either. Like if Kenny Atkinson decides to go there, there's a lot of lineup data that supports him being right, because you don't luck into being plus 26 per 100 possessions. And that's exactly what Max Strus in the core four has done. So I don't think there's a wrong answer. I just sort of think that DeAndre Hunter might be a little bit more of the right answer, if that makes sense. So I did say there's a stat that I'm going to be watching the rest of the season, and I think it's going to tell us a lot about how far the Cavs are going to go in the postseason rise. I'll tell you what that is next, right here on Locked On Cavs. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show on YouTube. And if you're watching, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the stat that I am interested in seeing from the Cleveland Cavaliers between now and the end of the regular season is, what is their defensive rating with DeAndre Hunter? I'm not talking about DeAndre Hunter specifically being on the floor. I am talking about what is their defensive rating from the time DeAndre Hunter first stepped on the floor on Monday night against Minnesota through the end of the season. Because in the 52 games they played before DeAndre Hunter was a member of the Cavs, before he stepped on the floor with the Cavs, this goes through last Friday night against the Wizards was the last one, they had a defensive rating of 111.7. That is the 8th best defensive rating in the NBA during that span. In the 2 games that he has played, and this is a very small sample size, in the 2 games that he has played, their defensive rating is 104.9. Of course, it's against a bad Toronto team, and it's against a Minnesota Timberwolves team that isn't necessarily a great offense. There will be stiffer tests for them, but I do think that acquiring a player like DeAndre Hunter means, one, you're not starting at square one defensively. He's an NBA player. He knows what he's doing. He's a really good NBA player. Like, the learning curve for him is not a super steep one, but he still does have to learn everything and the way things are done, because no matter what franchise you're part of in the NBA, there are little different intricacies. The teams will do certain things just a little bit differently, like the way they switch screens, or the way that the Cavs obviously play more zone defense than most teams in the NBA. Those things are different in Cleveland than they were in Atlanta. So DeAndre Hunter has to go through that learning process. And as he goes through that learning process, what I actually think this really serves as a good opportunity to be is a bit of a refresher course for the rest of the guys on that roster, because defensively they do a lot of different things. They play zone, they'll play box and one. They will switch, they will not switch. They will do a ton of different things. They have a lot of different coverages in Kenny Atkinson's toolbox. And I think that's a great thing for when the playoffs arrive. But I do think there's a little bit of a danger in being the jack of all trades and master of none. And I do think the Cavs can get better on that end of the floor. And I just think that adding DeAndre Hunter does, on the floor, of course, make them better defensively. There's no doubt about that. He makes them better. He gives them more optionality in terms of lineups. He shrinks the floor for opponents because he's 6'8" with a 7'3" wingspan, as we all have heard. He does all those things, and all of that stuff is really good for this Cavs team. But he also gives them a chance to get back up to speed. Maybe some of the things that they weren't doing well, as they have to practice it more, and as they do get some time on the practice floor, which will happen after the All-Star break, I think that serves as an opportunity for not just DeAndre to get up to speed, but the entire team to sort of refocus on that end of the floor. And the other thing that we've heard pretty frequently in the last week or so has been the communication aspect of things. Like, that is the one area where the Cavs say they can get better, particularly the communication with the big guys, with Evan Mobley and with Jared Allen. As those guys, is, if you listen to this podcast, you probably know, not the two loudest guys in any room. They're both pretty mild-mannered guys, and they are super competitive. Obviously, I don't think you get to the NBA without being super competitive, but they're not super loud, and that's okay. But I do think that's an area where the Cavs can get better. I think if they communicate better, you will see fewer lapses defensively. And I think having to communicate, not being able to rely upon, because the core four has been together now. This is the third season. They know each other really, really well as basketball players, people too, but as basketball players, more importantly. So they know defensive tendencies. They kind of know what's going to happen. They know how other guys are going to handle these things. But when you incorporate someone new into the mix, you sort of lose that ability, because Evan Mobley and DeAndre Hunter maybe have a bit of a relationship because they share an agency, or, DeAndre Hunter and Darius Garland maybe have a bit of a relationship because they were drafted one pick apart from each other, but they haven't played together, and they need to learn through being by communicating these things with each other on the floor. And that's a really important thing. And if that is an area where they truly can take a leap, I think this is a good opportunity for that side of things to grow. And I do think that we will see the defense get better. So I'm going to be watching from the day DeAndre Hunter first stepped on the floor. What is the Cavs defensive rating the rest of the year? It's going to be something that I'm probably going to be updating here pretty frequently. Maybe that'll be part of my, when I do trends early in the week, Monday, Tuesday, maybe that'll be part of my trends thing there. But that is something that I think is worth keeping an eye on, if nothing else, is if they get better, if their defensive rating in the final 30 games of the season is better than that 111.7 number was, I think you're going to feel really good about the Cavs. Maybe a good goal, because I don't know that they're going to be able to get into the top 5 for the full season defensive ratings. I just don't know that that's going to happen. So right now they're still 8th at 111.5. So their defensive rating for the season has gone down a tick since acquiring DeAndre Hunter. Getting to 5th, they would have to drop it by almost 2 full points per 100 possession. That's a pretty big jump to make in 28 games. And that, of course, is assuming that no other teams ahead of them make improvements. And I just don't know how likely that is. But maybe the goal should be, instead of being top 5 for the season, they should be top 5 from the day that DeAndre Hunter first started playing for the team. I think that would probably be a pretty good goal for them to have. Thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today. Thanks for making it your first listen every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Couple notes about the show. So next week, you might know, maybe you've heard this, it's the All-Star break. The Cavs don't play another basketball game until Thursday. So I'm still going to have a show every day. Tomorrow, I'm going to have the Friday 5. I've not yet recorded that. I'll record that later on Thursday, try and get a feel for what exactly I want to talk about. I haven't thought about that yet. Monday, I'm going to do a mailbag. It will be recorded probably late this afternoon, probably late Thursday afternoon. So if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, and you have a question for a Locked On Cavs mailbag, drop it in the comments on YouTube, tweet it at me at Real D Cunningham, or find me on Blue Sky at Danny Cunningham on Blue Sky. If you want a question for the Locked On Cavs mailbag, send them there. And there will be a mailbag episode on Monday. I have already recorded an episode for Tuesday and Wednesday, and then next Thursday, the Cavs are back in action. So that's when the whip around episode next week will be. I'll be talking to folks that cover the Brooklyn Nets, the New York Knicks, the Memphis Grizzlies, because basketball will be back a week from today. And if you're like me, I know you certainly can't wait for that. But thanks again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. I'll be back tomorrow, of course, with the Friday 5. I can't wait to talk to you then.